Okay, so we went over all the sentence issues. So now I have my other section I want to go over, which is we already went over no you. Okay, next up on the other section is say what it is. Say what this is. Sometimes we say it and this, but we don't clarify what it is, and the reader is getting lost in the shuffle of what is it. Is it this or this? Is it this issue? Is it this dynamic? Is it this problem? Is it, whatever it is? Or it, what is it referring to? So I had, when I was a student at Sonoma State, a junior at Sonoma State, I had a professor that told me you need to say what it is. It was one of the best writing tips I've ever had, in that it really kicked my writing up to a new level of being able to be clear. And to this day, I still always think, what is it? What is this? And I'll try to say what it is. And it really, really allows you to be more clear and specific. So instead of saying it, say what it is. Sometimes we just use the word it so much that we've forgotten what it stands for. Put what it stands for. All right, so I have notated that if that was an issue, and it's a common one. So it's also easy to fix, right? All right, so say what it is, say what this is. All right, spirit of goodwill. You want to maintain a spirit of goodwill in your essay. Normally, this can be, it can come up because we're human, with the opposition. The opposition is not your enemy. They are just people. They're just people with a different view, a different idea, maybe different life experience. They're not your enemy. They might even be convinced if they read your paper, and understand the logic of it and where you're coming from, and it's presented clearly. You could shift some thinking, right? But not if you're insulting them, not if you're talking down to them and belittling them and being sarcastic toward them. And well, they're not going to be interested in your idea, frankly. I mean, so you need to maintain a spirit of goodwill. The opposition is not your enemy. They're just people with a different opinion. So you need to maintain that spirit of goodwill. I keep saying it over and over again, but it's just really diplomacy. Use diplomacy. So you don't want to use sarcasm in your paper. It does not read well. It reads like you're on a rant, and this is not a rant. This is another issue I have down here. I'll cover these two at the same time. This is an intellectual exercise. And so even though we can use our emotions to fuel our writing, we have to maintain that this is an intellectual exercise. This is our intellect driving the car, not our emotions. And sometimes we can get so fired up about these issues. That's human, it's natural, but we need to watch out for it. That we're getting, just really angry, honestly, about the issue, or somebody that disagrees with us, or, a lot of times we're just human and something else happened, and that really has nothing to do with this issue. And we're just pouring it in there. It's an argument paper. I'm really gonna, put all my stress into it. No, don't do that. It's an intellectual argument. Okay, so and just think, you have the ability to be able to shift someone's thinking, but not if you're treating them in a way that is not with goodwill. So it doesn't mean that you can't argue your point. You are, but you're doing it logically, you're doing it clearly, and you are, so there's no name calling. To be clear, there is no name calling, no sarcasm, no cliches. That's another issue. A cliche is an overused phrase, and sometimes we use it in really demeaning or belittling ways, and that's not okay. So we're not going to do that. So if I said cliche, it doesn't mean that it was in a demeaning way. It can just be an overused phrase. But at any rate, don't use the cliche, but also don't use it to put people down or something like that. Okay, so just know that they're not your enemy. They're just someone with a different opinion. I think sometimes we just misunderstand, and we think with an argument that we're supposed to be hey, I got to be really forceful. We have to be strong, clear, and you have to clearly state your thesis very clearly. And so I don't mean that you have to be shy and I don't know what but that kind of thing. But you don't want to be offensive either. You don't want to be upsetting people and making them, like the reader. Again, picture reader Skippy Doo down the street, happy as anything to read your paper, and then you start being really sarcastic and just kind of demeaning and belittling them, they're not going to be interested in even finish reading it, let alone be convinced to your opinion. But just look at it as an opportunity that you can actually perhaps shift somebody's thinking, or at least help them to understand that you have a good point, right? So maintain a spirit of goodwill. All right. So avoid vague generalities. I did already talk about that. Broad statements that cannot be supported. That goes into actual logical fallacies, which is like hasty generalization. Also connects with that. A logical fallacy called hasty generalization is that there's one in a writing textbook I use that says all poodles are vicious dogs. Well, that's a hasty generalization. That's obviously there are poodles that are not vicious dogs, right? So you can't, that's just unsupportable, because you're gonna have all kinds of evidence of poodles that are not vicious dogs, right? And people do that with dogs, right? And people also do that with people, and we can't do that. That's a generalization. You can't generalize about an entire group of people saying that they have these characteristics. You can't generalize about an entire country of people, even our own. You can't generalize about an entire region, say all Californians think this, or whatever it is. People are individuals, right? And so we have to allow for variance of experience and individuality, and we don't generalize about people, or dogs for that matter, or anything. So it's also like unsupportable. You can't support vague ranting generalities like that. So you got to avoid that. Be specific and clear, and every idea that you put forth, use evidence to support it, and that will help you to avoid that. All right, and then already talked about that. So let me just quickly do that here. Let's see, was there anything else? Oh, yeah, here. One more on the other section. Definition by stipulation. So you need to define any terms that you use. First of all, you need to define any terms that you use. So I know, this was talking about, in many cases, parenting. The articles I gave you talked about some different ways of parenting in this regard. But the general reader does not always know child development terms, and if they do, they may not know what you mean by them, right? So you need to define those terms. That's called awareness of audience. So this should be for the general person that is not a child development professor, right? Or a person that's not working on this paper or just read that article, right? So for example, authoritative parenting style. Not everyone that is just walking down the street, they may be a very intelligent person, but they might not be really familiar with that term. You need to define that, and you need to define it for the purpose of your argument and the way that you are using that term. And so to be clear, authoritative is kind of that middle of the road, that they're involved and very present and active as a parent, but they're not overly strict. And they're not also anything goes either, right? So that's that middle ground. It used to be called, when I was taking child development classes, it used to be called the democratic way of parenting. So they've switched the terms. I actually like the other one. I actually think that term kind of is a little more consistent with what it is, because it was taking the children's views and considering them well and that sort of thing. Authoritarian parent, that term has stayed consistent, is very strict, is very traditional. Parents say what's going to happen, and the children need to listen and that sort of thing, and do what the parents say. So there's, and it's not that one method is right and the other is wrong. These are choices, and you can be a good parent and have any of these different methods, to be clear, right? But that is authoritarian. Authoritative is now what used to be called democratic parenting, where you are involved, you get the children's opinions, you consider them, you discuss things with them, that sort of thing. Ultimately, the parent is in charge, but they're really trying to involve the children in teams and things like that. The other method of parenting, sometimes referred to as free range, but that is a little bit more specific, is it used to be called the laissez-faire method, and now it's something else. It's not free range. I can't think. It's the more one that's less hands-on. It's a little more hands-off. But now this is not neglect. to be clear. This is an actual method. This is where the parents are clearly trying to be good parents, but they believe in the children being able to really experience things for themselves, hands-on. It's an aspect of that is free range. Not all parents who have that. The old term is laissez-faire, so I'll go with that for right now. So that is, there's that method, right? So, and it's not, again, this is not neglect. This is not just like I pay no attention. I don't care what they're doing. No, it's not that. It's like they sincerely think that children need to have more hands-on, and, that the parents should let them have more independence. Okay, so there's that. And those are, so meanwhile, then we have free range parenting, which is a recent term, that's more, it's just a little more specific. Free range parenting could be an aspect of laissez-faire, or it could be an aspect of authoritative, but it's that the children need to be able to be more independent and experience the world from themselves, but the parents are still, they're still in charge, and they're still, concerned, and they kind of set up the parameters usually. So, but that's the free range aspect. You need to define these terms in the paper, right? So I know that it's hard when you're in school because the professor is reading your paper, right? But really the professor is just a stand-in for a reasonably intelligent person that may or may not be an expert on this topic. So the term helicopter parenting is, and it came up in one of the articles, but it's not really an academic term. It's kind of a pop term that people use a lot. The normal usage of helicopter parenting means that you're hovering like a helicopter, right? That's how that term originated. People that are very protective of their children, and they're kind of hovering and helping a lot. They're not necessarily overly strict. I mean, they're just kind of, they're usually the moderates, more authoritative. They just hover a lot. They're just protective and concerned, maybe overly so, right? But they're not overly strict normally. If you are using that term differently than the general usage of the term, then you need to explain why you're doing that and explain the context, because otherwise the reader is not knowing that. But any of these terms have to be defined. You have to use awareness of audience to understand that the reader may not be aware of the term, or even if they're aware of the term, they may not understand how you're using the term in this context. So you have to be very clear about that. So definition by stipulation, meaning define the term A, but then stipulate how you will be using the term for clarity. So that is just a term that, like, for the sake of argument, we're going to say it means this. So we are all agreed on what the term is, that sort of thing. All right, very good. All right, so then I wanted to go over the extra credit. So most people got the works cited really well. If that and if there was any issue with that, you can still work on that. But most people got that. Parenthetical citations were some was one of the things that came up in the extra credit. So I want to talk really quick about MLA 8, which is our MLA latest thing that we're in for MLA, and parenthetical citations. There is a lot of confusion about this. Sometimes I find that students think that they don't have to do parenthetical citations with MLA 8. That is a complete misconception. So I'm going to try to clear that up. So MLA 8 says that if you, in the sentence, with the quote or before the quote, if you give all of these things, you have to have three things: author's full name, the title of the publication, and the complete title of the article, that you don't have to parenthetically cite. So, for example, in the New York Times article, Parenting Today by Joan Smith, right? And then you give the quote. So notice I gave New York Times publication. I gave the title of the article, Parenting Today. I gave the author's full name, Joan Smith, right? Then I actually don't have to parenthetically cite. What I find that happens like a lot is that we don't give all those three things. There are three things you need. That we only give two of those things, and then we don't think we have to parenthetically cite. That is so incorrect, right? Because the reader doesn't know where to look for the citation if parts of that are missing. So you can do all three things, or in any case, you can just parenthetically cite. So here's what I actually advise is forget about not parenthetically cite. Seriously, just parenthetically cite. Then if you did three things, or you only did two things, or only did one thing, you still have the citation there, and I cannot really think of anyone that would mark you off for putting in a parenthetical citation that was more than you needed, but they will, including me, count off if it's less than you needed. So I would just parenthetically cite. I honestly wish they hadn't made that change, but in any case, so unless you have the 3 parts, right? We'll call it 3 parts instead of 3 things, right? Author's full name, title of the publication, title of the article, right? That you must parenthetically cite if you don't have all of those 3 parts. If you are parenthetically citing, in the parenthesis, what goes in the parenthesis? Author's last name, right? So I just said Smith. I'm putting in Smith, right? You do not put the year of the publication in the parentheses. That is APA. We are doing MLA. So if you're taking a criminal justice class, nursing class, whatever, they use APA, psychology, all that. Fine. But MLA, no. Just put the last name. If it is a print source only, you would put the page number there. But if it's an online article, then you don't have to put the page number, okay? So what if there's no listed author? If it's just you have the title of the article, then you would just put the, I'm just going to put title of article, right? Then you put the title of the article in quotes in the parenthesis, okay? That is only if you don't have, I'm going to just, sorry, get it a little bit closer, you guys can see maybe better. That is only if you don't have an author. Somebody wrote it, but it's not listed, right? So title of the article would then go in parentheses. What if you don't have any of that? Let's say you were writing something that you had to go to the DMV website for some reason, and right on the homepage of the DMV website were these facts about something that you needed, what the cell phone laws of driving or something are, right? And then that's when you would just put the website. It's on the homepage of the website, and it's not in an article, and it's not attributed to an author. That's when you can just put the website. Otherwise, you need the title of the article. So first, how I remember this, first is the author, because the author is always the most important. They wrote it. They get the credit. Second is the title of the article, because that's the second most important. Third, if you don't have any of that, then you go for the homepage of the website. Okay, so that's parenthetical citations. And then that was the major thing that came up for full extra credit points. Oh, sorry, I'm having all these issues with my easel. Is that you did need 5 to 7 pages of solid writing. But I say that if you wanted to get more extra credit points that you didn't get and you still wanted to add a page or something, I mean, like, it has to still be an essay structure. You can't just randomly slap on a page that really doesn't make sense and it's just kind of randomly floating in there. I hope nobody would do that, but who knows, right? So it's 5 to 7 pages, but it has to be 5 to 7 consistent pages with essay structure. But that said, if you would still want to get, you're still working toward getting a couple more extra credit points, yeah, you can get to you can still get those full extra credit points by doing the 5 to 7 pages, because then it's a full research paper. That's fine. And then do set up your quotes. So instead of just dropping the quote in your explanation, you explain who said it and you explain how it connects to that topic sentence. All right. So that's something that just came up a bit. Okay, so I'm going to take down my easel that's falling. So that is pretty much it for what came up the most. I'm just going to move this, sorry. Okay, so again, to recap, you can revise your paper. As long as you turned in this essay, the first essay, you can revise it. And so you can please do read the note, read the in-text notes, and just follow the directions on the revision. But you must submit both versions, and you must highlight thesis and topic sentence. Thank you.